You have to make a goal of addressing that deficit, and that starts by balancing the budget. So a goal is to balance the federal budget by 2035. And it can be done. You can't be afraid of actually setting that goal and then saying, how do we get there? Well, there are a couple of things that we could do. We could take a Rancho Cordova example. If you look at how the federal government does budgeting, it does this thing called zero-based budgeting, where, when I worked at Sacramento County, my first year I came from the private sector to the public sector. And in the private sector, our goal was always to identify how to be as efficient as we could, identify how to use the resources that we're entrusted with in the most efficient way, and to have money left over at the end of the year. So, my first year running the county clinic system, we were coming in about 20% under budget, and it's like, this is great. We're going to return money to well, in that last month and a half, the managers who had been there at the county, they just started spending money as fast as they could. It's like, what are you guys doing? This is a good thing. We're going to return money to the taxpayers. And their answer was, well, if we don't spend all the money right now, next year when we ask for a budget request, we're not going to get the same. Have you heard of anything so ridiculous? Only in government, not all government, because if you look at how Rancho Cordova does their budget, they do it on a 2-year budget cycle. So you start to remove that incentive, and there's a reason why this is a very fiscally sound, fiscally run. I'll let Ken and Bob brag about it, but last Congress we introduced a bill to go to 2-year budget cycles. Can you imagine? I mean, you're talking about $1 trillion, a $4 trillion budget here. Can you imagine if we were able to move into a 2-year budget? So you moved off of this, all of the. So it's things like, now it's not easy to change, an entrenched system, but it is incredibly important that we start using sound principles. Again, following the example of cities like Rancho Cordova, and going to otherwise our kids are going to be saddled with this huge debt that is going to crowd out their ability to do anything. And I don't want that to be the legacy of my generation.
Thank you, Ami. Well, when I hear the question about balanced budgets, I immediately actually do think of our kids. Because in California, coming out of recession, what we really need to be doing is growing business, growing job opportunities. We have actually, you go back to 2007, we have 7 cohorts, 7 groups of college graduates, 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, who graduated when the economy was not producing great career type of jobs. So I actually think California, our economy, the size of our economy, the proximity to the ports, the diversity, frankly, of our state, there are many things which I put in the category, I'll use an old-timey word, allurements. There are many alluring things about California as a marketplace for business to come, but we need that business to come here to grow jobs. As they grow jobs, that will deal with our revenue picture. We are continuing, the state of California has, we do balance our budget. And nowadays, the kind of stories we are seeing is that, well, we thought we had one level of revenue coming in 2015, and we're more than $1 billion ahead in revenue. So California has plenty of revenue, but fiscal discipline, not spending short-term money for long-term programs, this is very important. I'm a big proponent of the legislature becoming the co-equal branch of government to sort of rein in the executive branch a little bit. And last year, when the budget went through, I was one of only a couple of members of my party that voted against a ongoing expense for the high-speed rail. Not that I sort of think actually the San Francisco Bay Area with BART was probably a factor in the resilience of the Bay Area in the recession. People could get around and didn't have to drive their own cars. But at this moment in time, I don't buy into that expenditure. And we had a bill that because it involved an ongoing expenditure year after year, a so-called continuing expenditure, one vote spread over a span of years, probably $1 billion in spending. And I actually voted no on that bill, which put me in a different position vis-a-vis most of my colleagues.
You probably got some flack for it.
Yeah, I did.
I know down at the federal level.
Yeah,
You got
yeah.
certainly got flack.
But so I don't know, I think, to me, you have to be disciplined. I mean, the beauty of Rancho Cordova is fiscal discipline ultimately gives you flexibility to deal with uncertainty. And it also lets you deal with opportunities. The progress we are making on the Veterans Village, I think it reflects our fiscal discipline as a city. And Bob will probably mention this, but even during the recession, Rancho Cordova's credit rating got raised twice. Not lowered, raised twice. So fiscal discipline is very important. It kind of creates opportunity for the future. And that's sort of what I'm working on. So specifically within the legislature, I would say my work on building relationships within the body across partisan lines is a part of trying to make a more effective legislature. Each session of the legislature, my first bill has dealt with regulatory reform, trying to deal with the dynamics of our business climate. And I've also gone into areas, there are certain issues of how our legal system works that have drawn tremendous negative commentary, scholarly commentary, but also on the pages of the New York Times, Wall Street Journal. And so I'm always sort of an advocate that if there's a national issue that affects our business climate that is getting bad marks for California in national newspapers, I always feel that's an issue that we ought to tackle, because if we make progress, that's going to be national news, and all of these businesses we'd like to come and invest in and create jobs for our kids or for our young marrieds that are underemployed. We start tackling these national issues that are already a bad mark for us, and we make progress, that will itself be national news that we're moving in the right direction. And we do need to grow those jobs. I'm very focused on that.
Thank you. The balancing the budget, have money left over? Question mark. Next year, if we do that, we'll have less. Now, I worked for the phone company, Pac Bell, for 33 years. And that is what we heard when there was all of a sudden more overtime coming in toward the end of the year. Well, if we don't spend the money, then we're going to get less next year. And that's kind of what you hear from some government entities sometimes, and that's kind of sad when you have to spend money. Why? I mean, if there's money left, then maybe you can provide more service. Maybe you can pick up something that should have been done already, but you didn't have the money. Private industry and public both are doing the same thing. And Ken said during the recession, Standard & Poor's gave us the rating up twice because we didn't spend money that wasn't there. That's also another good thing about people who've been working for Rancho Cordova is we have been able to, with some of the contracts we have, having a contract with the Sheriff's Department, for instance, that kept us pretty solid as far as money is concerned, as far as police are concerned. And we have some people working for our city, city and planning, have a contract with that. It gives you the ability to be flexible. And in the future, many of the things that are on a contract right now will be our own police, for instance. In the future, that will probably happen. Citrus Heights took 10 years when they were a city before they decided to have their own police. So I don't really mind the fact that we are in year number 11 and a half now, and we don't have our own police yet. When the economy is good and you're taking time, then that's what you learn from. That's what we did. We learned from Citrus Heights. And so that's what we've been doing. And then the recession taught all of us something, and that is the new norm. I'm sure you've all heard of that. Well, so have I. The new norm now is something that never has been in the past. Something that's going to be good for the balancing the budget. And there's a school in Rancho Cordova called a STEM school, Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics. That's kindergarten right now, and it just started this last year. Kindergarten through 4th grade. Next year is going to be a 5th grade. They're growing that school. But what you're doing is you're teaching kids when they're really, really young. In the third grade, they're working on building robots. I mean, those are the kids that are going to be going on into middle school and high school and college, and they're the ones that are going to be filling the jobs with technology. They're the ones that are going to be the engineers. But right now, there are so many jobs, and the people and the kids and students in Rancho Cordova can't fill those jobs. We need to have the students get those jobs because they were taught the right thing in school. So that would also balance the budget. You have the people getting good jobs here, rather than having to send their jobs overseas, or get somebody from another country come and fill in the job here, when it should have been someone here in Rancho Cordova who was not taught. When we have our post-secondary college finished, a 2-year college, there are a lot of technologies that you can learn in 2 years. You don't have to have a 4-year college. So a lot of the jobs that we have here in Rancho Cordova, from DSP and Franklin Templeton, and just go on, we have so many jobs here. But they can learn in high school, and then 2 years college, they can get the jobs. We're working with the businesses here. What do you need? So we can tell the students, these are the classes you need to take. And these are the jobs you get. That'll help balance the budget for the city and the state, and actually federal government too.
Thanks, Bob. Looks like we have time for just one more, and I know there were a lot of other questions that were written in here, and they'll be shared with each of the assembly members and the congressman's staff, and I believe they'll try to get back answers to anybody that had emails put on here. But Congressman, we had multiple questions about some pending trade legislation that I had to leave